So today's a good day. Why is it a good day? Because John
Because
Mattox
it's
is here.
Friday.
Oh, that too. Okay.
It's
And
Friday.
we can talk about HR and data literacy and all this stuff. What have you got for us today, John?
Just continuing the series on HR data literacy and this whole notion of know your numbers.
No, you know.
Today, the topic is going to be desirable and undesirable turnover. Some
Always
people may
alive.
know it. Yeah, and something definitely worth tracking, not just from an HR perspective, but from the business perspective, because there's value in who you keep and who you don't.
Yeah, I'm often inclined to say to leaders, how many people are you retaining and why? And especially now when people are furloughing undesirable employees, it begs questions about how do you measure them. So show us, come on, what have you got here?
All right. Let me jump into this. So, just an introduction. The purpose of this web series is just to build data literacy for HR professionals and leaders. Our content, 3 to 5 minutes, data rich on the content, very short on time. It's you and me, Doug,
Yeah,
Action
man.
Learning Associates. And for those of you who are listening, we're going to post these out to the web. So ask questions there, post reactions, share examples. We just want to get the community going on this.
This is when I hold up your two books, but I don't have them in hand right now. Okay, turnover.
All right, but thanks for that, Doug. So turnover, got two simple definitions. We want to talk about desirable turnover, and that's a situation where unproductive employees leave the organization. And then undesirable turnover, that's a situation where a highly productive employee departs, leaving a substantial productivity gap. Some pretty simple definitions here. And our graphs on the bottom show as turnover goes up, productivity goes down. And while those are just simple numbers and the relationship there, the relevance to the business is that as productivity goes down, so does revenue. So
This is critically important now, especially with PPP loans, and business owners are looking at privately held businesses in particular are looking at who should they keep and who should they let go. And the individuals that they either have let go or put on furlough are asking, why would I come back? Why would I come back
right.
to the organization? So I think there's two sides to the turnover question, from an owner and a leadership management side, as well as the individual who has some questions about where they're going next. So this is good stuff.
Absolutely. Great. So let's keep going here. So all employees are not created equal.
What?
Well, we make assumptions like on the left side of the screen here. If we have a team of 3 employees and they generate roughly $18,000 of productivity a week, we assume that each of them is contributing about $6,000 of productivity a week.
We don't, because we're smarter than the average learning analytics people. What do we think?
Well, at least what we recommend is you should know your numbers. Know that you might have 3 people where one, employee A, is 90% productive. 90% of the time they are doing great stuff. And they're generating $9,000 of productivity a week. And then sort of that middle level person at 60% productivity, generating $6,000 of value a week. And then the low level person, employee C, they're 30% productive and generating $3,000 per week.
This is good. I get that you're using kind of artificial numbers here, but it's always the case, isn't it, in every team, every organization, that you know who the high pros are, the high performers and high product producers. And sometimes you don't reward them in a significant way. So I like where you're going.
Right. And to your point, if you don't know, then you don't know your numbers. And that's a risk for your organization.
Measure, how's that go? Measure,
monitor, manage.
Thank you.
Yep. So at the bottom here, simple formula. A equals 1.5 times B and A equals 3 times C. Simple numbers, right? But let's put these in context. So the consequences of that math is that if employee C departs, your productivity decreases by roughly $3,000 per week. That's a 17% drop. And you go from 100% productivity down to 83. It's a drop. It's not a huge drop, but it's a drop. And it's something you could probably backfill with extra work for the other 2 employees. But if C is replaced by an average employee, that person at that 60% productivity level, then it actually productivity increases from $18,000 per week to $21,000 a week for your team. That's desirable turnover.
Yes.
All right. Now, if you look at person B and he or she leaves and is replaced with that same average person where they're generating 60% productivity, there's no change. And that's fine, just turnover. However, if person A leaves productivity is cut in half. So you go from $18,000 per week to $9,000 per week. That is undesirable turnover, hands down. Let's put this in a little bit more context here. It would take 3 of your subpar employees, 3 of employee C, to replace employee A, or 1.5 employees to replace employee A with someone who's 60% productive.
I'm
The
liking
consequence
it.
here,
It's very simple, and it makes to explain, and it makes me think about that Moneyball movie and story, and the
right?
impact on sports, where a general manager would look at the producers and compensate them and look for who gets on base rather than some other measures.
Exactly. Now you'd want to replace 1 for 1 and then keep your cost level if you can. And that was the problem with Moneyball. They couldn't keep their cost level. So what
Hmm.
they did was replace 1 with 3. But in this case, if you can keep your cost level, it means that if you're replacing 1 person with 1.5 or 1 person with 3, your costs are going to go up. And
Yeah,
that's undesirable. That affects your bottom line productivity. And that's what you want to avoid.
nice.
Great. Doug, you mentioned it earlier, measure, monitor, manage. So these are our recommendations, drawing this to a close. So desirable turnover can increase productivity on top and bottom line value, hands down. Undesirable turnover can substantially decrease your top and bottom line value. Now, here are the recommendations. Measure your turnover. If you don't know your numbers, you're flying blind. Monitor your departure risk for those employees, especially your high performers. Who's likely to leave? And lastly, manage your turnover with employee programs designed to retain high performers.
So these
Now,
are the
these
what to
last,
do's, and I want to add the how to do it. Most internal managers can't do these kinds of measures by themselves. They need an external, more objective person like you, John Mattox, to do this work, not only for objectivity, but for objectivity over time. So if it's done every month or quarter or year, then you can look at not only who's likely to leave, but that real cost given whatever business variations occur. Here we are in a pandemic. Nobody predicted this, really, but we could have predicted X happening. If you had a 50% decrease in your customer base, what is that going to mean to your employees? I like it.
so the last 3 topics here, I mean, you touched on turnover and departure risk and what we do and how we deal with it. I think these are great topics for upcoming webinars. So stay tuned. And folks, if you have any questions, give us a call. Thanks for your time.
Measure, monitor, manage, measure. Monitor. Thank you, John.
All right, take care.